I would like to thank Bill Sanders of the Interfaith Association of Harrisonburg and Rockingham County for inviting me to address this interfaith gathering. I'd like to acknowledge, obviously, Father Daniel Robayo, Rector at the Emmanuel Episcopal and President of the Interfaith Association, for that wonderful introduction. I would like to also to acknowledge Pastor Adam Blagg for his technical assistance as always. And my presentation starts with a story. The hot day was seething with dry heat in the summer savanna of Zambia in southern Africa in August 1964. My father, mother, and brothers and sisters were worried. There was tension, sadness, and anxiety in the Tembo family of 9 children. For days, we did not know whether we would see our second oldest 15-year-old sister alive. We were a family of 9, 3 boys and 6 sisters. For days, there was news on the radio and many rumors that a religious war had broken out in our home district west of Lundazi, including my mother and my father's villages. Maybe over a total of 600 people in our 2 villages alone may have been burned in their grass-thatched houses, killed and massacred. Our sister Misozi, not her real name, at the time was attending Kanyanga Catholic Mission boarding school, which was right in the heart of the religious war. That school was about 10 miles from our 2 villages. The tension was unbearable as we waited every day for what seemed like days on end. On that hot day in August, that I'll never forget, the sun was setting as the family was sitting in front of the house. Someone said, "I can see something coming up the road. There is someone." We all saw a small figure bobbing its head up and down on the western horizon from Chipata Lundazi Road coming towards our house. As the lone figure drew nearer, we as the children screamed first, "It's Sister Misozi," as we ran excitedly to greet her and hold her hands. She looked haggard and had a weary smile on her face. Misozi was ragged, her face unwashed, her hair shaggy and dirty. She had not had a bath for days. She had dusty bare feet and had just walked 5 miles from the main road. She was only wearing a dress and a chitenge cloth draped over her small shoulders. She literally had only the clothes on her back. As a child, the best part about my sister Misozi's safe return was to see the utter joy and relief on my parents' faces. Their baby was alive. As a Zambian or African family, we quickly conducted the Malonje greeting custom. This is when the host greets the guest and the guest gets to explain the details of the purpose of their visit. So Misozi gave us the Malonje description. This is what the whole family heard from my sister, my older sister Misozi. All the converts of the new Lumpa church for weeks had gathered at Kamtola headquarters in the northern province of Zambia near the town of Chinsali. They had decided they would kill all the non-believers in all the villages. The small clinic at Kanyanga Catholic boarding school for weeks was overwhelmed, treating those wounded in the war who were brought in by the truckloads. Thousands had already been killed. As the war drew nearer to the school, the Northern Rhodesia British colonial government sent 4 buses to the school with armed battalion soldiers to evacuate the school. My sister and her schoolmates hastily boarded the buses under heavy armed soldiers. Some soldiers rode inside the buses, some were located on the rooftops of the buses. No student was allowed to bring anything besides what they were wearing. My sister tried to find her shoes. She was at gunpoint told to hurry up and get out of her dormitory because everybody was boarding the buses. So I want to really talk about the significance of interfaith unity. This is a rather dramatic introduction to the topic of interfaith. This is a very vivid example of the extreme of what can happen when either interfaith does not happen or religious groups become intolerant. It need not always result in murder and violence, but it has happened in history. It is happening now, and it will probably happen in the future if people of different faiths do nothing in the presence of escalating religious tensions, hostility, and violence. In this presentation, I want to discuss 4 specific aspects of the positive aspects of living the interfaith mission in life. The first is family attitude. Second, the attitude of community and the religious faith itself. Third, the policies of the government regarding the interfaith mission. And fourth and last, I'll answer the question, is the interfaith mission the solution to religious tensions, hostility, and unfortunately, violence? So, the family and interfaith mission. Our attitudes about religious differences within our Zambian or African family may have been influenced by a long cherished social value that is taught and expected of all brides and grooms as they are about to get married. Older women advise the bride that if your husband likes a particular food and you yourself might dislike or might not care for the food yourself, cook that food anyway and very carefully serve that food to your husband with respect and joy. In the same way, older men advise grooms that if your wife likes a particular food, even if you dislike it, or might even hate it, get it for her. Give that food to her with respect and joy. Your wife, so the groom's advice, will love you forever. This might apply to how we treat or respond to different religions that might exist in our communities. You may dislike how they pray or what God they say they pray to, but you should always respect how other people pray or in their religions. That's the best way to create interfaith peace and harmony. My family of 9 and I must be the luckiest people in the world. My parents taught us to and encouraged us to attend church. They were comfortable with all of us belonging to different churches, including some who might not have been as religious. We all respected each other, were tolerant, and my parents made sure that happened. I attended a Dutch Reformed Church boarding school for 3 years between the age of 11 and 13. My 2 older sisters belonged to the Catholic Church. When my sisters belonged to the Catholic Church, my dad always liked to tease my sisters. So they would come back from the boarding school during the holidays, and my dad, maybe on Tuesday, would say, could you please slaughter that big rooster? We're going to eat it on Friday. And then as we are eating it, we'll lick the soup and all the gravy off of it and get all the meat off of the bones. We'll finish all chicken on Friday. Of course, they were teasing my sisters who couldn't eat meat on Friday. So that was a running joke in our family. My father always brought up that joke when my sisters came home from school. My younger sister belongs to a Pentecostal church. One of my brothers joined the Islamic faith. My parents never expressed religious zealotry or never insisted on religious purity like the early Puritans on the east coast of the United States did. Religious zealotry and purity, which certain forms of religious fundamentalism exhibit, may be antithetical to the interfaith mission. So let's look at the attitude of the religious faith itself. The attitude of the religious faith itself may determine whether its members can practice or fulfill the interfaith mission. Is the religion tolerant of members of other religions or non-believers? This is the toughest question because it gets to the heart of whether people of different faiths and religions can live together as neighbors, schoolmates, and as community members with minimal or no religion-based tension and conflict. Even though the edicts of the religion may endorse members avoiding, shunning, ostracizing, and even harming people who belong to other religions or non-believers, can religious peaceful coexistence still be maintained? And that's a key question. Again, my answer goes back to the beliefs and experiences within my family. The family is the first line of defense or mitigating the negative or hostile religious attitude. When a child, a parent, or other family members say negative things about someone belonging to another different religion from their own, it is up to the parents and family members to object loudly to the negative behavior or comments. Whenever any of my siblings or myself said anything negative about people from a different religion or different culture, my parents were the first ones to discourage that behavior. My parents' words always echo in my mind up to this day. I'll tell you, my mother is about 88, my dad is fortunate enough, he's 92, they're both very healthy. They live in the village. So they would say in Tumbuka language, that is, if we said something disparaging about somebody or some other culture, they would say in Tumbuka, iwo para upemphera nthana, wakwanangira vichi iwe panyake ise pa banja litu, yayi, kanao ndimo upemphera. Kuli chikatolika, kuli chitawala, kuli chiislamu, vantu upemphera mu mitundu. And that is translated as, so if they pray like that, how did they hurt you or us as a family? No, don't say such negative things. That's the way they also pray. There are Catholics, Watchtower sect members, and there are also Muslims. There are just different types of religions in the world. Can you imagine what does you as a child when you hear it from your parents? It obviously translates into, hey, they're just different types of people. Some neighbors might just be different. That's okay. That's what the parents, projecting there. So I'm not here saying this is easy, maybe in the face of religion-based provocation, hostility, or even violence, or even murder. I often ask myself, how do those people who live in different religions, religious hotspots, live their everyday lives? I'm referring here to Muslims and Christians in northern Nigeria, for example, who frequently have violence flaring up, resulting into horrendous violence and murders. Right now, Boko Haram is doing incredible, murderous things, all in the name of their deep religious faith. And I think that is really wrong. I don't know how they did this and why it happened that way, but after the Lumpa religious war ended in my home country of Zambia, in my district, many surviving former members returned to the villages in Lundazi. Some of them were my kinship relatives. There was forgiveness and quiet reconciliation, and there were no reprisals at all up to this day in all the villages. I sometimes wonder, am I really living in this real world? Because I saw the aftermath of that war. It was a horrible war. And some people just came back, settled back in the villages. No one chased them to revenge or anything like that. That tremendous forgiveness is something, as I was growing up in my culture, I've always carried with me. And that's probably one of the purposes of the interfaith, is hopefully to be able to achieve those levels of forgiveness, even in the event of very heartbreaking things that might happen. The next one I want to talk about very briefly is government policies. Government policies can set the tone for interfaith peace, coexistence, and religious tolerance. Despite the rough start of the country's independence in which the Lumpa Church religious war happened in October 1964, Zambia was a non-racial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society. The president of the country, who was Kenneth Kaunda at the time, and the top political leadership always emphasized freedom of religion and peaceful coexistence of not only people from different racial, ethnic, and racial backgrounds, but also accepted religious diversity. My country of Zambia is the size of Texas, and has a population of 14 million. It has 27 so-called tribes, or more accurately ethnic groups, because tribes no longer exist in Zambia and much of Africa. And I'll just give you this next quote from my book that I have here, Satisfying Zambian Hunger for Culture. There are 2 chapters on religion. This quote says, and I quote, "Zambia Christian denominations are mainly Protestant and Catholic and include Anglican, Pentecostal, New Apostolic Church, Lutheran, Seventh-day Adventist, Jehovah's Witnesses, Branhamism, and a variety of evangelical denominations. Christianity so dominates the country that some reports suggest that an estimated 85% of the population belong to some form of Christianity. Another 5% are Muslims, 5% other faiths, including Hinduism, Baha'ism, and traditional indigenous religions, and 5% are atheists." So you can see that, and I end the quote there, you can see that there's a lot of, that diversity does exist there. It seems a successful interfaith mission not only depends on the community living a positive life of cultural diversity, but it ought to live a life of active cultural integration. Zambia is so lucky because it might be the most ethnically integrated society in the world. This is no hyperbole or exaggeration, because I've taught racial and ethnic studies at Bridgewater for the last 25 years, and I know some of the problems of lack of integration. The US is a classic case where, in spite of 200 years, the integration has never been a comfortable subject in this culture. So it might be more accurate to say that my home country of Zambia has peaceful religious coexistence because the government and the political leadership actively implemented the social integration of the so-called 72 tribes or ethnic groups within the context of a non-racial society. So let me briefly talk about, is the interfaith mission the solution to religious tensions, hostility, and unfortunately violence? My response to this is rather nuanced. It may not even be what you might expect. I would like to thank the Harrisonburg Interfaith Association for the great work they are doing to create harmony, unity, and reconciliation among the various religious faiths in the community. Maybe we could talk about this in the question and answer time, but if a community and society has already established the 3 factors I talked about, there may be no need for a formal interfaith mission or organization. So by that I mean that if all those 3 things I talked about are done well, people will already be living in harmony. And my feeling is that if families live with people from different faiths, communities, schools, clubs, and neighborhoods live with people of different faiths, and lastly, if the government and political leaders already espouse the virtues of people from different religions living together, then the formal interfaith mission organizations become icing on the proverbial cake. So let me just elaborate on this. If in Harrisonburg, for example, because I like to be pragmatic when I teach, because sometimes you talk about all these theories, but let me just get down to the weeds here. If in Harrisonburg all the families lived in a way where they said, yeah, religious diversity is a given in the community, and they told me in this white family, another person in an African-American family, and somebody else from a Muslim family, they are all in the same school, and Johnny can see Mary wearing a burqa in class and whatnot, it becomes normalized so that later on there's not really any problems because you're already familiar with that. Now, if the community is already living that way, then there won't be any religious hostility because people know each other already. And then if the government and top political leadership is also espousing diversity and interfaith sort of association, and they are also genuinely comfortable about it, then the interfaith mission or organizations become icing on the cake. But on the other hand, if there is not all that tension, there isn't much integration, then you need to create an interfaith sort of organization to try, as it were, to put down the flames as they are rising up. There's an incident in the community, then you create this organization to try to really organize, which is really very good. But again, the groundwork needs to be done earlier in the families and in the churches, in the communities. I'll give you an example. In Zambia, where I was growing up, I told you that Muslims are 5% of the population. But when you have already integration, what happened was, at the whole high school where I went to school, 400 people in Chipata, there's a small Muslim community who are mainly immigrants from India who came to Zambia in the 1930s and 20s. They are mainly work in the retail trade. So they have their own they have the mosque and their own neighborhoods. But guess what happened? The Muslims in the community who are from India, they sent 5 of their students to our high school. So in my class, I had a Muslim Indian child who was my age mate who was sitting next to me. In fact, at one time we even had a little squabble fight in there. But we used to play together and talk and whatever, you shove each other, you are familiar with each other. As a result, they and us are comfortable. So as a result, Zambians in general, because of this integration, people don't feel like being next to a Muslim is a threat because they have known them since when they were kids. But if you do that when you're trying to be older, when the foundation is not there, then you have the makings of some real difficult problems. That's really all I'm saying. So, in conclusion, a successful interfaith mission in all communities or societies start with families that actively encourage and live the mission in their homes. This is where we should pause and ask, is the Harrisonburg community living the interfaith mission? Is America as a society living the interfaith mission? Secondly, a successful interfaith mission in all communities or societies start with the different religions themselves actively encouraging and living the interfaith mission in their congregations, in churches, synagogues, mosques, and elsewhere. We can ask the same question. Are Harrisonburg city and churches in the surrounding counties living in an interfaith mission among their congregations in churches, synagogues, mosques, and wherever they might worship? That's a question that we can actually pose too. And lastly, a successful interfaith mission in all communities and societies start with government and political leaders actively encouraging and living the interfaith mission among all the diverse religions within the country. You can ask the same question. Is the American government and the political leaders encouraging the interfaith mission in the entire country? You probably can answer that question, for yourselves. So anyway, I had promised that I would share with you a song that I sang with my first grade classmates during a religious knowledge period in 1959 in my home village school in Zambia, in Southern Africa, 1959. It's a long time ago, but it's really amazing how when something dramatic happens in a class, you can remember it so many years later. That afternoon, I was herding goats as usual. My uncle called me. He said, Mwizenge, you are going to school. I said, oh my God. I said, okay, well, bought you some school uniform. Go and wash, make sure you're clean, wear your school uniform. I'm going to take you to school. I was excited. The school was new. I said, oh, this is exciting. So my uncle took me by the hand and walked to the classroom, the first grade classroom. The teacher, I remember his name, I think it was Mr. Kumwenda. He says, come in, come and squeeze in between there. The class was jam-packed. On each desk, there was like 5 kids there. So I went and squeezed in between. I was just mesmerized with what was going on. My classmates were already singing. So the song was this. As a leader, you say, Adam, Adam. For you, as the responders, you'd say, Adam Naiva. Okay? So I say, Adam, Adam, Adam Naiva. Adam, Adam, Adam Naiva. Chinjoka chikulu chikamunyenga Adam, Adam Naiva. Chinjoka chikulu chikamunyenga Adam, Adam na Eva. Chinjoka chikulu chikamunyenga Adam, Adam na Eva. So as they were singing, so let me tell you the translation of this song, because you might be saying, what is it saying? So obviously you should already have figured this out. This is Adam and Eve. So chinjoka chikuru chikamnyenga Adam means a big snake tempted Adam and Eve. So the teacher was drawing a big snake on the board. I still remember that image up to this day, with his head on this side of the board. And he was carrying the snake as we were singing. It was thrilling. I said, oh my God, I'm in school. This is amazing, you know. And then my education started from there. And it was very, very exciting. So that's how I got to sort of exposed to Christianity. And people ought to know that sometimes there's an assumption that when missionaries came to Africa, Africans were being exposed to religion for the first time. Oh my God. No, that's not really true. Africans were very religious even before Christianity came. And that's why they were so receptive to Christianity, because they already had some very good religious values or religious beliefs. You may not, some of them might not be perfect. I don't want to give the impression that this culture was just, oh, what Mazrui